We're Ultraviolette and the future takes off with us. What you see here are several generations of the F77, right from 2018 all the way to right now in 2022. Now here's something that a lot of us probably agree with. When it comes to technology and vehicles, we've always looked to the east or the west for inspiration. And we believe it was time to reverse that trend. That is the single reason we started Ultraviolette. Now cut to 2016. We were super confident the future is electric, right? But the question was, what segment do we get started with? And if EVs had to take off in a big way, there were two important factors. One, convince everybody that EVs can absolutely outperform ICE engine vehicles. And two, EVs have to be desirable, right? And what better segment than motorcycles? Now, motorcycles are highly emotional products, right? They're not just a mode of commute from point A to point B. Motorcycles represent freedom, represent being impulsive, being wild, and doing pretty much what you want when you want to. So these core values added with a whole new layer of technology is what the F77 is all about. Now the origins of F77 itself, right, the name. So 7 stood for the 7th generation of the prototypes, and I think the other 7 came from 70AH on the batteries. And we at Ultraviolette are all fans of fighter aircrafts. And that's where the F came from, the whole F series, right? You have the F14s, F18s, F22s, F35s, and so that led to F77 being our internal code name. And I think in a few months before we knew it, the word had spread outside, and a lot of people from the outside community were starting to call it the F77. And when are you launching the F77, right? So at some point, we took a hard call on, okay, now this is the name going forward. Well, I've always been fascinated by aircrafts, right? This goes back to when I was probably 6 or 7. Went to a hobby aero modeling course and got hooked on ever since. So the last, I'd say, 20, 25 years, been building all forms and shapes of aircrafts, right from line flyers to RC airplanes to electric gliders. And today that is a very deep part of my design philosophy, my understanding of how things have to function, and the form reflects the same. So in essence, a lot of honesty that goes into whatever we do here at Ultraviolette as well. Now let's come to the F77, right? You see a lot of aircraft influence in it, not just from the design side, but the engineering side as well, but more on that in a while. Going back to when we got started, what it meant was an opportunity to showcase what the future of electric mobility could be. An opportunity to showcase what design from this part of the world represents, right? And I mean, what do I mean by this? When we talk about iconic designs, we sort of think of Japan and the kind of styling and the kind of essence that the vehicles have there. It's a lot of aggression, a lot of speed that is represented both in the form and the function of the vehicle. Now move over to the West, right? You look at Europe, there's a lot of sensuality in the way things are designed and marketed as well. Now, what does it mean for us at this point in time in India? And this meant two things for us, being bold and being progressive. Everything that we've done represents being bold and being progressive, right from the segment we've chosen to the whole design of the vehicle to how we've gone from concept to production, right? It's been a bold and progressive journey. Now, specifically on the design side, our first intent was form meets function and get this integration happening really well. So this meant the design and engineering teams work really closely with each other to get this output. So this is the version of the F77 called the Airstrike, and very close to me personally. This is probably the first personality that we worked on. A lot of inspiration came in from the aviation industry. Again, the color themes, for instance, there's blues and grays and mild accents here and there, very functional in nature. Again, goes back to how aircrafts are color graded to camouflage with the sky. And the whole bold stance of the bike, right? You see, it's a aggressive sports motorcycle, but when you ride it, you have to be one with the machine. I mean, that's one thing that sets motorcycles apart from all other types of vehicles, right? Being one with the machine. And what do I mean by that? I mean, the way a bike handles, the way a bike performs is all about how you and the machine function together as one synchronous unit. So the way your legs wrap around the tank, for instance, the way the stance of you on the motorcycle and the whole thing coming together on the road from a third-person perspective. Now, the other thing that I believe really sets a product apart is attention to detail. This has a lot to do with design and engineering coming together once again. And for instance, look at the headlights. We wanted a really strong identity for the F77, which ultimately can progress into an identity for the ultraviolet portfolio vehicles itself. And the amount of detailing that has gone in right at a proof of concept stage, then getting to all of the metal components of the bike as well. Most often these are just purely functional units, but in our case we have treated each and every single thing as a work of art. This is a milled aluminum swing arm. Now we're of course using casted aluminum, but there's a lot of engineering complexity that went into the design of this unit. Now the powertrain that we have doesn't allow us to have a really long swing arm, but at the same time, the ride comfort and the tuning possibilities have to be intact. Second, we wanted the whole mid-segment of the motorcycle to be compact. That meant narrowing the swing arm down where it meets the chassis, which also meant the chain had to pass through the swing arm. Now this led to a lot of iterations in terms of firstly getting the functional aspects right, and secondly, you can imagine the kind of tolerance issues that we had to deal with and solve for. Coming to the internals of the motorcycle, I think the same attention to detail and paranoia has gone in here as well. This was, I think, the first time we solved for having the frame interact with the motor mount in a way where the motor mount is a stress-bearing member. That went through a lot of simulations and iterations to get it right. And this version of the F77 had 3 battery modules that went in here. You could take the modules out, but what we realized was the range was hard capped at about 130 to 150 kilometers. And that led to a lot of redesign in the whole chassis architecture. And let's go take a look at that now. Now this is the production ready rolling chassis for the F77. And oh boy, like we get super excited every time we see this. I mean, that was great, but the level of refinement over the last 2 years that we've gotten to is astounding. We've sort of optimized every cubic inch of volume available here. And before we get to any other details, let's talk about the batteries. This battery pack can do 300 plus kilometers of IDC range, and that has been one of the coolest innovations we pulled off in the recent past. And coming to the frame, the motor mount, of course, everything has gotten refined, it's gotten lighter, a lot stronger. And a good example of going from a prototype to production would again be the swing arm. You look at this swing arm from the exterior, you don't possibly see a visible change. But when you look at the inside, you see all the ribs and the strength members and the stiffeners that are attached. That was a result of the testing team giving us feedback for over a year and multiple iterations happening on the field that went back into design and is now going into production. That is one example of our design process, and that approach has gone into pretty much every single part of this motorcycle. Now this is what lies inside the final F77 here. Well, the design intent has pretty much stayed the same between the generation 2018 till now, but there's been a lot of incremental improvements on what you have here. For instance, starting off with the most prominent winglet that you see here with the vents. So that is meant for additional motor cooling. The other area that has improved are the seats. The rider seat specifically, what you had there was a bit short on the tracks. What you have here is very comfortable for all sorts of riding conditions and use cases. Coming to the headlights, a lot more work went into the headlight. Our team, in collaboration with our partners, to get the exact light throw, the sort of identity that we wanted, and a zero dilution in terms of what the fascia of the motorcycle represents. One remarkable achievement on the design process. Look at the entire exterior surfacing of the F77. Not a single visible bolt head or screw anywhere. That's been a tremendous problem that we've solved. And one more area over the last 2 years where we focused a lot of attention is the display UX and UI. Now this is something you guys need to experience. Well, that's been over 5 years of R&D across aerospace, automotive, and consumer technology to create the F77. Let me leave you with one thought. We've seen concepts, we've seen production vehicles, but how often have we seen a production vehicle surpass what a concept promises to be?